Honorable members, can...
Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Of the total recurrent expenditure for the financial year 20 in respect of the votes as contained in the first schedule to the order paper. 3, approves an overall decrease in the total. Move this, Honorable Speaker. I would really want to thank the members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the supplementary estimates number 2 of the financial year 2020-2021. The second supplementary estimates were tabled in the House, Honorable Speaker, on the 9th June 2021, pursuant to Article 223 of the Constitution, Section 44 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, PFM Regulations number 40, and National Assembly Standing Order 243. It is also important, Honorable Speaker, to note that the second supplementary has been submitted to this House 3 weeks to the end of the financial year. Honorable Speaker, the tight timelines for the scrutiny of the supplementary budget often compromises the things, including one consultative outcome of these deliberations, Mr. Speaker, has informed the various recommendations which are contained in this report. If approved, Mr. Speaker, these recommendations will form the basis of the passage of the second supplementary for the financial year 2020-2021. Honorable Speaker, given the highlights of this supplementary, Honorable Speaker, I really want to say that the supplementary estimate of the second supplementary of the 2020-2021 proposes an overall, Speaker, is a reduction of 955 will be able to avail the funds. Honorable Speaker, the other reduction is also in the judiciary, EA, appropriations in aid correction, salary adjustments and changes in development partner financing. Additionally, the budget seeks to regularize approved expenditure and the reallocations already expended under Article 223 of the Constitution, among a reduction also, Honorable Speaker, of 1.95 billion from Nairobi Metropolitan Services programs in the Executive Office of the President, which of course was on account of low absorption. A reduction, of course, also, Mr. Speaker, of 1.80 billion from the air transport program under the State Department of Transport, and basically was because of loss of A&A. Many of these reductions, Honorable Speaker, as I have alluded earlier, is on account of low A&A collection due to the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy. Honorable Speaker, on the other hand, and this, Honorable Speaker, on the other hand, the Minister of Energy, there is also a reduction of 3.78 billion from the Health Policy Standards and Regulations Program and the Ministry of Health. A reduction, of course, also of 2.72 billion from the Public Finance Management Program bill, 6.47 billion shillings in the preventive, promotive, and reproductive health on account of acquisition of COVID-19 vaccines. Honorable Speaker, the last financial year. So it was just being left, and we are happy that this time around those issues have been settled. Honorable Speaker, there is 1.10 billion for accelerated ASO development program under the State Department for Development in the ASO for the Hunger Safety Net program. Honorable Speaker, as I go to conclude, Honorable Speaker, the committee further noted that there are many affected programs under the supplementary budget that do not have an analysis of the physical impact of the proposed changes to the affected programs. Indeed, there is no change in some targets and key performance indicators, that is the key KPIs, despite a significant budget adjustment. Thus, one sometimes cannot tell what benefits or impact the 2021-2022 budget will have on an economy, or if it is simply an accounting tool showing how public funds have been spent. Honorable Speaker, on the consolidated fund services, the expenditure has declined by Kenya shillings 3.63 billion. This reduction is largely on an account of suspension of hesitant, Honorable Speaker. And I'm happy to report the other pending bills accrued in the current financial year. There are also some pending bills as a result of court awards. There are other unpaid taxes due to KRA. The committee is concerned that the lack of sufficient provision for the aforementioned bills in the second supplementary may further worsen the skyrocketing amount of pending bills that we have witnessed in the past. Honorable Speaker, this is a matter that we have prosecuted with the ministry, with the departments, and we have said going forward in 2021. Given this sustained underperformance, Honorable Speaker, of the economy, it is likely that the revised revenue target of scrutiny, no supplementary budget, Honorable Speaker, should be submitted to Parliament after 30th April in any financial year. Honorable Speaker, as I earlier said, the supplementary budget too was brought to us on the 9th. We didn't have sufficient time. The second one is that the Office of the Auditor General should conduct a special forensic audit on all foreign finance projects, so as to establish, among other projects agreement status of the project implementation, including disbursement, value for money, framework for repayment of loans, and all that. Finally, Honorable Speaker, the National Treasury should also develop a framework for engaging the various MDAs, including Parliament and Judiciary, so as to have an inclusive process during the preparation of supplementary estimates. This framework should be submitted to National Assembly by 30th August of 2021. Honorable Speaker, the Chair, Speaker, for your indulgence. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, that the attached schedule forms the basis for the enactment of the second Supplementary Appropriation Act for the financial year 2020-2021. Honorable Speaker, as I call upon my good friend Dr. Makali to second, I want to say that for this year, unlike maybe in the previous years, whereby there are new projects that were introduced in the...
That is supplementary 2. And Honorable Speaker, if you indulge me, because my colleagues seem to have masks, I will also plead with you that I remove my mask. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will be very brief because my chair has already done a good job in moving this bill. And I want just to start where he has stopped. And to me, as a House, Mr. Speaker, they're going to inform the next annual estimates. And the answer is no. So I agree with my chair. And we needed to think seriously about how to accommodate some of the issues which have come up. And that's why you see the issue of the A in A. We didn't have a choice. We had to go low as compared to what we had anticipated, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, that's why you see institutions like wildlife have to be supported by the government because tourism has really suffered. So we are saying, if we are realistic at the time of budgeting, we would have projected low figures as opposed to what was projected. And that's why I want to ask this question. If a department was not able to spend the money we appropriated for them this financial year, then have we reduced their money for this other coming year so that we don't still provide more money and end up kind of increasing our budget deficit? So to me, this is another area we need to make serious, Honorable Speaker. And then the issue of the donor-funded projects, Honorable Speaker. What we have realized as a committee is that the reason why most of these donor funds are not being able to move is because of lack of what we call counterpart funding. The component which the government should be providing, you find it's missing. And this is a clear reflection that in terms of planning then, we need actually to improve our planning. Because at the time of planning for these projects and agreeing on who's funding, that time we must be able to make provisions in terms of counterpart funding. In that case, then the government will be able to, where we say this is more of a priority than this other one. And then we move resources to where we have more priorities. So with those many remarks, Honorable Speaker.
Financial year 2020/2021, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, June 23, 2021, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution, Section 4.
To look at this supplementary from two angles, Honorable Speaker. From the financial movements within the votes. This in itself, Honorable Speaker, is on the basis that Honorable Speaker, that the fund there was low absorption from the State Department Conservation and Management Program under the State Department of Wildlife. Honorable Speaker, wildlife is one of the key of the parks, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, finally, I want to look at the 1 billion for the State House Affairs Program in the Executive Office of the President. Honorable Speaker, without the head of a house, we cannot move. We want to support the executive so that they really move and move the country forward. But Honorable Speaker, before I wind up my support of the report, we have to look at, let the Treasury not give us the report on the last day, Honorable Speaker. We want to ask the Treasury that let them consider giving us the second supplementary at least a month or 1.5 months to the end of the year, so that at least we have time to interrogate what they want to do with the funds, and they also have time to correct if they are to disperse the funds.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I have always maintained, yes, I stand here to support and comment on the particular report before us, but Honorable Speaker, made in pursuance to Article 223 of the Constitution of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, this provides that the government can, it's a common practice elsewhere that budgets are revised along the line to accommodate emerging issues in the market. Imagine where I sit and where I stand here representing the people of Funyula constituency, that the mandarins at the State Department or the Treasury should have been in a position to develop scenarios that would have allowed them to come up to a more or less a reliable and dependable budget at the time we were passing the budget in June, July last year. Because Corona was with us by then, it was possible to do those projections. However, Honorable Speaker, coming at this time round, low absorption as a result of late release of the exchequer. Number two is inadequate collection of revenue under A&A provision. Thirdly is lack of counterpart funds for donor-funded projects. Honorable Speaker, this really suggests something is seriously wrong. Speaker, is it a question that the government is a dysfunctional government that does not seem to understand how to balance expenditure vis-a-vis revenue? As much as we know. Second, Honorable Speaker, there is a recurrent theme again. The Budget Appropriation Committee picked it up during the Supplementary Budget 1. They have again picked it up with the Department of Business Enterprise Development. Honorable Speaker, this lack of coordination sincerely indicates there's something seriously wrong with the management of financial affairs of this country. I have seen my time is up.
Honorable Speaker, that should have been given a priority. The universities, for instance, the statutory reductions has been a big issue in the universities. So, Honorable Speaker, when I hear that there has been further deduction of even the small allocation that was given to universities, I think as a nation, we are saying that we don't value this key institution in our development. So, Speaker, I want to say that as much as we are pressed with issues that exist, to bring out issues, because I remember as Education Committee, our key issue was to ensure that the universities are up and running. Over the last 1 year, because of COVID, the universities have been experiencing a lot of challenges. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very concerned about that particular issue. The second concern, Mr. Speaker, is that this supplementary budget is coming in too late. This is not the first experience for the time I've been in this House. That very crucial document say that it's important that this gets clear to those people who prepare this supplementary budget, that it is not one time we are hiding behind floods. Now this particular time we are hiding behind the pandemic called COVID. I think, Honorable Speaker, even as much as we are hit with the need to buy more COVID vaccines, more COVID equipment, the military budget in a financial year, then it actually tells you that we have even a bigger problem. And therefore, as a house, that is a budget. Having taught in the university and having been a member of the academic there, I have seen and understand. I was part of university administration, so I understand what happens that we only see capitation for universities in the estimates.
But Treasury never releases money to universities. And I want to say that this Treasury that we have currently, we've had, is actually deliberately killing and stifling universities by time. Laboratories in universities do not even work anymore because there is no capitation. Universities are not developing, no hostels. You can imagine, Mr. Speaker, universities cannot develop hostels. A young girl of 19 years who has just joined universities from his home or from a boarding school and goes into a university, and that young girl has to go and stay at this supplementary is actually covering a lot of pending bills. But what is the genesis of pending bills? Is it something that as a country we must continue? Right now, pending bills is becoming a major item. The budget and financial statements in the morning, and then now we are coming to do a budget for the financial year. Supplementary budgets need to option rate. Should be denied money, and that money be given to that officer or that state department that can spend money without having not to spend it within.
Your space is gone. It is Honorable Ashira Kabinga's time now.
Of the environment under which these supplementaries are being brought to us. Honorable Speaker, I think is some of the areas that we can keep cushioning our people against the pandemic, Honorable Speaker. Another important area, and as we approach the election period,
These two that he means. But I probably he'll.
Honorable Speaker, and I'm happy with the Budget and Appropriations Committee that it has accepted one of our proposals in my committee, Honorable Speaker, where we want to complete some of the children homes that were in application of section of Article 223 of our Financial Management Act to ensure that this is not abused by the various departments, because this constitutes a large part of our supplementary budgets, Honorable Speaker.
It came before us, and the fact that we needed to engage, recommending Treasury to relook into a way of handling most of these pending bills, because this is the reason why we have challenges in our economic stimulus programs. You cannot succeed to stimulate the economy unless they pay with a lot of interest. Honorable Speaker, we also picked the terms of how to make budget allocations. Honorable Speaker, the budget circle get the document to engage the departmental committees, and again to negotiate with various ministries in terms of their reallocations and many other. And one thing that I want to also urge members is that in as much as we have issues with this supplementary budget coming, we must understand that we are living in a very extraordinary. To say is that we observe that we need.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to pay bills that has not been paid. But what is surprising is that so many state departments have even now they have not been able to be spared. Everything seems to have been taken away, and there is nothing to be paid. This means because their finances are limited. Maybe they are borrowed from the banks. The banks will be on their necks. They will be able to be. They will not be able to pay even their workers. Some may have taken even mortgages to build their go-downs and even to put on their stock for the heavy working materials and heavy equipments, which will be left unpaid. Therefore, we need a system that will be able to look into what can we start and finish and be able to pay, rather than starting so many projects and we are unable to finish them, and even them that are doing them are unable to be paid. So the government needs to listen and be able to be careful on what is on the table, because we are not going on the right direction. When the CS was here and he was presenting the budget, if there is no money in those state departments, how will the pending bill be paid before 30th of June and there is no money? So I think we need to speak what we can do and start what we can manage and be able to finish and be able to pay so that we don't destabilize other people's lives, because if the auctioneers knock at your door and you have borrowed and you have not been able to pay, you will have no excuse but only to be able to be sold, and then you'll have nothing to claim. And the government will look at you, and even if you cry, they will not be able to listen to you, because there are systems on how you need to be paid. Therefore, what I would like to finish with is to say that we need to relook into the pending bills and to be very serious on how to pay for the projects and for the work done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Gikaria.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise particularly from the foreign funding. It is a very big figure, very huge figure, that will affect so many programs that were ongoing, Honorable Speaker. It's unfortunate that the Jubilee government, if this trend will continue, because we passed a law in this House where we did indicate that any person who incurs, under the Procurement and Disposal Act, you cannot be able to give a contract, try and address the Big Four agenda. So, Honorable Speaker, much as I do support the supplementary budget, Treasury needs to look into this very key sector, and denying it a staggering 8-point-something billion, Honorable Speaker, it is something that will go a long way in hurting this economy. So many projects were in progress because of the interest accrued on the monies that were. So, Honorable Speaker, I think it is a noble thing for us to be able to. Honorable Speaker, I don't want to talk about the short period, and it is hurting. You can imagine that you're given supplementary budget 2, and you have only a day for you to be able to give. You don't have even time to be able to interrogate respective ministries and respective sagas. And in one of that, we understood that one of the sagas, the department, is going to pay over 200 million to a loan. And you even wonder, how in the first place did you acquire that loan as an institution of government? And it was never approved anywhere. So these are some of the issues, Honorable Speaker, that if we are taking this money to go and buy loans, to pay for loans, Honorable Speaker, I think it is, I do agree that these monies will be used for, particularly for Kazi Mitaani. Yes, there has been so many pending bills, but at the same time, we would want, even in the budget that we have allocated, that we could even have more money going towards that very noble idea. Honorable Speaker, I know the aspect of as the chair had said, that this supplementary should not be coming here after 30th. It should not be by word. It should be by a legislation that we implore on the Treasury, that they must be bringing supplementary budget. No budget supplementary will be accepted after 30th of April. Honorable Speaker.
Which were raised by the committee. And it's unfortunate if we just raise concerns, especially those relating to violation of Public Finance Management Act, on introduction of new items in the budget. Mr. Speaker, when we passed the current year's budget, Corona has already hit us, and therefore there's no justification to introduce new things in the name of, dealing with the pandemic and so on and so forth. And if you critically look at these new introductions, it is as if, those in the Treasury have already spent funds illegally, and they want to sanitize through the supplementary budget. We should not encourage this. And if you look at the proposed cuts, when we were looking at the proposed cuts for ministries, various departments and sagas, we realized that there was literally no consultation, no involvement of the affected ministries and departments and agencies. by Treasury. To develop water resources and regulate the use. Agencies like those who are dealing with weather, which actually is supposed to ensure a constitutional fund, equalization fund, with a specification to allocation of equalization fund. Mr. Speaker, the law is very clear. If allocation for a particular year and the equalization fund has not been spent, the amount will be spent. The amount which was deducted from equalization fund should be returned back. Mr. Speaker,
is whatever that has been spent ahead. Of course, many people have talked about be affected in the supplementary coming budgets, and that has an effect, serious effect on what is being termed as bending bills across that's happening. Honorable Speaker, what is going on in our counties? Because our counties do not get releases from the exchequer on the equitable share on time. And when those monies are released, although very late, the Kenya Revenue Authority, apart from deducting their taxes, which is due to them, which is right, sometimes they do it with penalties. Because when you pay penalty for money that you have not received and which you are to remit in time, but you have never had it, that has an effect on the planning. Development partners, co-funded by development partners and the Kenyan government, stalled because of the monies expected from the national government. Honorable Speaker, accounting officers are allowed by law to spend 10% of the budget more on issues that were unforeseen. But what we see is that we always remake new budgets in the name of supplementary budgets. And accounting officers now have no regard to the law and to the estimates of budgets that are given to them in time. The issue of absorption rate is checked. It can't just go like we have 4 days or 5 days to the financial year and we are planning, because budget is a planning tool. It fails to be a planning tool if we always do supplementaries at this appropriate time. I support and I hope that this will be the last year we will do a supplementary budget such a time. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Odege, member for Nyatike.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Allow me to support the report on Supplementary Budget 2 presented by the Budget Committee. I have 2 issues of concern which I wanted to raise after supporting. When you look at the pending bills we are talking about it here, most of them in the ministries alongside the consumption rate are somehow stage managed, because if the Treasury is not releasing monies to the ministries, ministries have nothing to spend. So as much as we are going down, at the end of the financial year, you return the money without any expenditure incurred down there. So if you don't go about this one and we get a clear system of utilization of the funds, we'll keep on pumping money to the government, and this money will keep on going back to the Treasury and spent, and the projects will be there stalling. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I support.
The Honorable Amunyenye.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to make a contribution on the supplementary budget, Mr. Speaker. First, I join colleagues in appreciating the work of the Budget Committee, but more important, Mr. Speaker, these members have been given a chance to help to tie up. This is what supplementary is all about, Mr. Speaker, to tie up loose ends. The CDF board has received full allocation for this financial year, Mr. Speaker. A total of 41 billion earmarked for financial year 2020-2021 has been received. But however, Mr. Speaker, part of the money for this year has been expended on arrears. The previous allocations, which were never disbursed, Mr. Speaker, and that amounts to about 18 billion. 13.78 billion for financial year 2019-2020, and about 4.9 billion for financial years 2011, 2012, 2013, 14, and 14, 15, put together, Mr. Speaker, that bring about the arrears of 4.9. Now, one thing I want to commend the Budget Committee, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that they accepted to capture the 13.78 billion in the supplementary budget 1, the first supplementary budget, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this is what the Treasury is releasing in weekly disbursements, so that the arrears for 2019-2020 is completed. And we will also be asking, therefore, that we had requested for 4.9 billion to be captured in the second supplementary or in the main budget. This hasn't happened, but I would like you to go on record, Mr. Speaker, that the CDF Act is very clear about monies that have not been released by the Treasury to the CDF board. Section 6 and 7, and particularly subsection 2, provides for accumulation of CDF funds, and it also provides for carry forward. So there is no time that the Treasury can refuse to release funds that were due to constituencies for a particular year. Even if it's not released this year, it must be provided for the subsequent year, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to make an appeal to the chair of the Budget Committee to ensure that in the subsequent budget, supplementary 1 or 2 for the coming year, Mr. Speaker, that amount of 4.9
Just hold on, the
billion.
Honorable Amunyenye.
Yes, Mr.
Leader of majority, chair of budget, members, I think the Honorable Amunyenye is speaking to a matter that is very important to all of us. Let us give him an ear, kindly. The Honorable Amunyenye, I think you're making a very important report here. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You will have an extra 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the CDF Act provides for carry forward of funds that have not been released for a particular financial year. It also provides for accumulation. Now, Mr. Speaker, there was a dispute over the 4.9 billion that has not been provided in the supplementary budget 1, supplementary budget 2, and even the main budget. It is important that it goes on record that the Treasury doesn't have power to retain funds that were allocated to constituencies, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we did set up a subcommittee of our committee, and it comprised a representative from the board, a representative from Treasury, and the subcommittee was chaired by the Honorable Oyula, who was the Finance Secretary, Mr. Speaker, at the Treasury. The committee looked at whether the Treasury actually released money to the board or not, and whether the board has released the money to constituencies or not. Where the board did make a mistake, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that they used money for this financial year from the 41 billion for the current fund because we have passed the main budget. Then, Mr. Speaker, if that is not done, as I said, we're not going to receive, the funds. So, Mr. Speaker, as a committee, we have endeavored to ensure that all the monies that are received are transmitted to the constituencies. Last week, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, we understand the situation in the country is not been very promising due to the reasons we understand, COVID and so on and so forth. So last week, the Treasury did not release the weekly disbursement. You are aware of the challenges we have even in Parliament. But he has assured us that next week he's going to release slightly more than 3 billion, possibly 4 billion, from the outstanding 9 billion, Mr. Speaker. And then the remaining to be disbursed before the closure of the financial year. He even undertook to the House that by 30th of June, he would have cleared 13.78 billion. Now we have only received 4 billion. That has been captured in the supplementary, the 13.78 billion, and to request that the 4.9 is captured so that constituencies do not lose out. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much.
Thank you, the Honorable Munyenyi. The Leader of Majority, finally.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support this report of the committee on the supplementary estimates 2. And I fully associate with their sentiments as expressed in their policy recommendations. And to a large extent, I'm also in agreement that perhaps we see a very dangerous trend when we, today is really the 23rd. By the time we do this appropriation, we'll be almost at the tail end of the financial year. I'm not even sure what we'll be appropriating, whether there'll be time for its disbursement without having to rush it through to disburse. So it's something that we need to have a discussion with Treasury and with the executive about, that yes, the Constitution does say any expenditure that was not anticipated must be ratified within a certain time. But this supplementary 2 is not just about ratifying what has been spent. It's also providing for some payments to be made. So I agree with the committee, in fact, in terms of the timings, and I would even vary it further that, as you know, in the course of the year, it's taken more of my time than others, working with the chair of CDF. And when we now went deeper in terms of why our members not getting the money, we now discovered that the board, in its wisdom, had used part of the money to pay for arrears. That some are still part of the audit, some had been verified. But when we now came to supplementary 1, the only amount that was ratified was the 13.7 billion that related to last year. But there was a whole 4.9 that relates to previous years that's in abeyance, and I think half of it has been paid. Now, it's been paid from the 41.7 billion allocated for, appropriated for this year. But that amount has not been appropriated. So, in effect, to add up with, it's almost like if it's not added onto the appropriation, in effect, it will mean the 41.7 billion that was appropriated for this year includes the 2.9, which means the net amount is actually like 38. That was not the understanding of members of parliament. So I'm urging the chair of budget to liaise with the chair of CDF between today and the time the appropriation bill comes here. And if it's possible, to include it, because we still have some margin to that. The second item, on the Speaker, I am very happy that I think for the child welfare, there's ongoing construction that were going to embarrass kids and having them living in very decrepit conditions. But I'm also aware that some of those kids, as well as those who have been sponsored by the Child Welfare Society in schools, have been chased out of schools because of lack of fees. Now, the Constitution is very clear. I wish I could get an extra 1 minute, because being the last speaker.
Chair, you will have an extra 3 minutes.
Yes, because Article 43 is very clear on the rights of the children. Now, these are indigents. These are children of indigents. That's why they've been taken care of by the Child Welfare Society. they've been placed in schools, but because the budget for child welfare society was slashed irrationally, we now have so many kids in schools. And I'm getting all this information through my office in terms of appeals, that we have these children who were sponsored, they've been chased out. So it may not, we are talking about probably 100 million. And it's important, we accept what we do for them right now. So I would urging, let's put that money on Monday, or wherever we come to this house. And at least not embarrass the children, not embarrass the children's homes, and the Child Welfare Society. They're doing a good job in taking care of those. Plus, of course, ratifying what has been paid by CDF, so that we don't end up with a situation where money has been paid, it was not appropriated, and ends up eating into the 41.7 for this year, and we have a fight with members of parliament when we resume in July. I think with those two, if those are addressed, my issues are addressed, I beg to support.
I hope the Honorable Amunyenye and the Honorable Kanini, you have listened to the Leader of Majority carefully. I think we need a resolution of that. It will be in order if we can find a solution as quickly as possible. The Honorable Kanini?
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as I rise to reply, Honorable Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank
Give the Honorable Kanini the mic to reply.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. As I had earlier said, Honorable Speaker, I really want to take this opportunity to thank all the members who have actually contributed to this motion, and I want to tell them for sure. There are new projects, yet the old projects have not been finalized. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, I want to thank members who have stayed late, because, Honorable Speaker, being here at 9, Honorable Speaker, in the night, is commitment. And thank you so much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this chance, and I reply. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well, the Honorable Kanini, I think that is a job well done, and I want to, of course, thank the members who have taken time to contribute to it. For good reason, I will defer the question to this to tomorrow, so that I'll direct that we move to the next order of business.
Order number 9, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the national government for the financial year 2017-2018. The resumption of debate.
As you are aware, Public Accounts Committee is one of the most critical and important oversight committee in Honorable Speaker. As we contemplated under Article 95 of the Constitution of Kenya, one of the roles of the National Assembly is to appropriate funds, another one to exercise oversight over national revenue and its expenditure. This particular role is donated to the Public Accounts Committee, Public Investment Committee, and other funds and other committees that oversight. Honorable Speaker, under Article 201, under Public Finance, it is required that public money shall be used in a prudent and responsible way. One of the key duties, therefore, of the Public Accounts Committee, arising from the report of the Auditor General, is to test whether public funds have been used in a prudent and responsible way. Honorable Speaker, reading at the entire report, reading at the summary report, reading at the auditor's report and other reports, we can simply, on average or on the overall, confirm that public funds for the year under review 2017-2018 were not used in a prudent and responsible way. Honorable Speaker, looking at the various conclusions by the Auditor General in respect of various departments, you would find close to 80% of the agencies have qualified reports, meaning that there were material issues that were not properly addressed. Honorable Speaker, one of the most irritating, and I want to use the word irritating, recent audited accounts approved by the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, we are debating 2017-2018 financial year. We are now preparing the budgets for 2021-2022 based on 2016-2017 approved accounts. Honorable Speaker, the challenge and therefore the point of concern that we members of Parliament must raise, that since 2017, does it reflect the performance of the economy? Does it reflect the performance of revenue collection to use for the basis of allocating equitable share of revenue? Honorable Speaker, there are quite a number of issues that come out very clear in this report. And therefore, we need as a committee, we need as a parliament, we need as the people of Kenya to basically review. One of the issues that has come out, and Honorable Speaker, has been mentioned when we are discussing supplementary budget, with the committee, observed that on average, there was underutilization of the approved budget by approximately 8.5% over the 5 years. Honorable Speaker, us as Parliament, we need to go back to Article 201 and ask again, are we using of the FME system? Honorable Speaker, as we sit in Public Accounts Committee, one of the obvious things that you normally see is that there's always a difference between the ledger and what is contained in the FMEs. You find that the figures do not match. Yet the stories that we were sold to, that FMEs was foolproof, that all the activities of government expenditure and collection will be channeled through FMEs, so that any given time a reconciled account, both from the bank reconciliation, and FMEs will be the same. However, Honorable Speaker, in many of the instances, you'd find that the balances in the FMEs and balances generated elsewhere are completely different. Honorable Speaker, in that circumstance, it becomes extremely difficult to confirm whether public resources were prudently used in a manner to give benefit to this particular country. And therefore, you'd find, Honorable Speaker, in many times, all the MDS have flouted Article 201 of the Constitution of Kenya that requires them to perform or undertake or expend public resources in a prudent and transparent manner. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude to support, Honorable Speaker, as Parliament, we urge our members to approve this report. It contains
those particular years. Pendy bills were really a menace. And the most unfortunate thing also in that particular year is that the government had been sued immensely because of pendy bills, where projects were going, and in those particular projects, you know, payments were not made for those who had worked. And in certain cases, the works were half done, and in other cases, even the work did not start at all. A good example is Chimorel around Dam, whereby some monies were expended, and the contractor, who for one reason or another never really went to ground, is claiming close to 5 billion shillings from the government of Kenya for breach of contract, among other reasons, Mr. Speaker. And in a situation whereby the project was never done, and you have this sort of money being claimed, and most probably ending into court, and most probably judgment are likely to be given in favor for breach of contract. Mr. Speaker, it would be good for the country to have a policy of reviewing pendy bills, and especially where people have worked, to make sure that their monies are paid. The effect is that most people who do these government projects have borrowed money from institutions, and the moment there is a delay in payment, these monies accrue interest, and a lot of occasions, contractors and people who have worked for the government, Mr. Speaker, have ended up being auctioned and eventually civil suits against that particular department or against the Attorney General and sue. And clearly, at one point or another, that amount of money will be paid with interest. And in that regard, the government loses a lot of money in terms of what would have been used to do a good job. So, Mr. Speaker, the point is efficiency. So that wherever government projects are completed, whether in the national government, because this is also happening in the counties, and definitely the money we allocate here to go to the counties, although it is accounted differently on that part through the Senate, also we have quite a big loss on that side. And coming back to the national government, it means that a lot of money which would have been saved is eventually allocated to pay these pending bills, and they have come out very clearly, and it's not a very impressive thing, Mr. Speaker. Not wanting to repeat, because I followed this debate carefully, what others have said, Mr. Speaker, I would like to support and insist the issue of pending bills is really a pain, and we have to come up with a system whereby pending bills in this country are cleared on time so that the government does not incur unnecessary expenses, and whereby contracts are also paid in time and again reviewed properly. One of the other things, Mr. Speaker, which has come out very clearly is that projects will be started and then reviewed in the process of having been started, and a different amount of money quoted other than what was in the original contract. That really, ends up compromising the processes of procurement and opportunity not being given to other Kenyans or other contractors who would have been interested. Review upwards. Although the law stipulates to what percentages these reviews can happen, Mr. Speaker, it's one of the areas which ends up in delays and eventually ends up with queries and eventually pending bills, Mr. Speaker. So I beg to support, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
The Honorable Sankok, you had already spoken to this, and now I see no further interest in this. There being no other member who has not spoken to this and showing interest in this, I therefore call upon the...
I want to appreciate, as I reply to the report, all the members of parliament who have contributed to the report. Honorable Speaker, on onset, I thank the members also for the positive contribution that remained to this report. Honorable Speaker, I have members of parliament who has given a lot of information, and knowing from the background of finance, Mr. Speaker, to the effect that us as a committee, we call ourselves as a post-mortem committee. Honorable Speaker, in dedication to the members of this audit report, honorable members and Honorable Speaker, in its moving the chairman, Honorable Pio, during the debate, several members emphasized on the importance of the PAC reports on our country, and more, Speaker, to the devolution. Mr. Speaker, the adoption of this report, the Equalization Fund under Article 2041, that is designed to end marginalization of some areas in the country, is calculated on the basis of most recent, since adoption of this report will inform how revenue will be shared between the two levels of government, that is the national and the county. The report thus recommends that the total national collected revenue forms the basis of sharing revenue between the national government and the county governments as contemplated in Article 2033 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. And this report, Mr. Speaker, ensures that more will go to counties. I think for our counties in this country and for Kenya, the 47 countries, through the report of the Public Accounts Committee that I do deputize, and that we have the Honorable Mr. Opio as a chairperson, and the members of the committee in this house and others in the holding areas, we've spent sleepless nights to come with this report, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this house, we have dealt with issues of budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we call ourselves a post-mortem committee. It is important for us to look at the money that we have been allocating to the relevant ministries, and also looking at the after use, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the last few weeks we have been dispensing with budget-related businesses. And the leader of majority is here in the house, he can agree with me. It was about budget, it was a budget process, budget till the appropriation. So, Speaker, it is important to look at the recommended, this report talks in a different picture. Honorable Speaker, allow me to point a few issues. Number one, the supplemental budget, of course, which he did the 2020 and 2021, which was before this house, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is important for us, much as we allocate money to these relevant ministries, it is important for us to look at the expenditure. And in fact, that is the work of the Public Accounts Committee. And that's why we call ourselves a post-mortem. Why would you give money to a relevant ministry or a department, state department, and yet here we pass it as a members of parliament, and we cannot be able to account for the money spent if it is not spent prudently, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we'll just be doing our work in vain. Honorable Speaker, the chairman was moving this report, and I want to thank the members who have contributed this. They have alluded themselves to the fact that we need to be very careful in the expenditure of the funds. And of course, that is the work of the Public Accounts Committee, the members of the three oversight committees that just been given this parliament, the CDF committee, Public Investment Committee, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we really must make sure that the money that we have allocated as a parliament, as a National Assembly, is spent prudently, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so the debate on this report, Mr. Speaker, we have learned from value contributions, many honorable members of the concerned, and of course these are majority members, Mr. Speaker. They have concern on the management and the monster of the pending bill. I want to allude to the contribution of Honorable Manso, who talked about the pending bills. Mr. Speaker, we have an issue in this country, and as a finding of the Public Accounts Committee, that we have been able to pay the genuine suppliers, and we have been able to pay genuine suppliers, and the genuine suppliers have not been paid. Mr. Speaker, this has been an elephant in the house, and we're trying to support the elephant in the house. And it is important for the ministry, as we have recommended, out of the recommended, I'm sure the members are really a big report. The members must go through the report and see our recommendations, Mr. Speaker, that we ensure that the genuine suppliers in this country have been paid, compared to the ungenuine suppliers, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, and this comes to the issue of the public debt management and the monster in the pending bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill also observed the debt has accumulated over many years, which has been talked by many members, which I really appreciate. And I keep on saying this is a post-mortem and the most important committee, and as I say, the Public Accounts Committee is one of the most important committees, because we do a post-mortem of what the National Assembly, through the committees, the budget appropriation, the passing of the members of the National Assembly, the Committee of Budgets, appropriation of bills are passed. And it will be so bad, Mr. Speaker, if we don't look at what we have given to Kenyans through the relevant ministries. We don't do an audit of the same. And I want to thank the Auditor General for bringing up issues Most of the issues that have been commented brought by the Auditor General before this House, they are very critical. Mr. Speaker, we look at issues of unsupported documents. Mr. Speaker, from my accounting, and I want to tell this House, I'm an order of my first degree in Bachelor of Finance from the University of Nairobi. I'm an order of my second degree, master's degree, strategic management from the University of Nairobi. I am an accountant from the accounting body, fully flagged. I'm doing my PhD. And of course, I'm the deputy chairperson, Public Accounts Committee. So for this matter, I'm in full knowledge of these matters. The Speaker, with the members telling me to carry on, thank you. That's Jessica for you. And that's why I'm putting this committee. And yesterday I really applauded the former, those many years, Minister of Finance, the Honorable Kemunya, who I like listening when he talks about finance. When I was doing my master at the university, the Speaker, it was the Minister of Finance. And I'll tell you, I could tell how we collect revenue and how we spend our money. Honorable Speaker, having served in the Public Accounts Committee for 8 years in this National Assembly, so Speaker, there are so many things. Number one, the the accounting people in the ministries, Mr. Speaker, they have been able not to, or maybe to, I don't know, to defraud the Public's Finance Management, that's PFM Act. The Procurement Act, Mr. Speaker, and its members have alluded here, and I want to thank them as I reply that we have not been able to follow them. I want to thank my chairman. We have been able to make, and my committee, very important recommendations. And Mr. Speaker, even now we ask ourselves, in this parliament, as we this report.
The honorable Jessica, just hold on for.
Thank you, Honorable
What's
Speaker.
about the honorable?
Honorable Speaker, I just want to, maybe, will I be in order to suggest that with the beautiful CV that the members put forward to us, that any member contributing on the floor, Honorable Speaker, declares where he went to school, how he achieved the papers, so that, Honorable Speaker, all of us can be at par the way the member has been put to us, Honorable Speaker.
Very well, thank you. As I continue.
The Honorable Hangwe, if
issues raised by the Auditor General, issues of unaccompanied documents. Seriously, Mr. Speaker, you cannot spend. We cannot give this parliament, give money to institutions, and they cannot account to us how they are spent, simply because of not availing documents. I mean, as far as auditing is concerned, that to me is not acceptable. Most of the issues we're asking in the committee is, why have you not been provided documents of payments? Just a payment voucher. Ensure that Kenyans understand why we cannot even have documentation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I reply, I want to thank the members who talked about procurement process. Indeed, as the mover, which is my chair, moved, we had issues of procurement. Seriously, the state departments cannot follow the Procurement Act and regulations. Mr. Speaker, why would you be here as departments, Mr. Speaker, that we've been able to congratulate? Some have been given reports by the Auditor General that are not, affect them in many ways. Of course, just few recommendations. We call them accounting advisors, Mr. Speaker, which one sometimes we can allow for them to do better. So, Mr. Speaker, as I reply, I want to thank the members who have contributed to this. I want to thank my chairman. I want to thank the members of the National Assembly. You have spoken really into this. But from the 3 weeks that we've been passing, and Mr. Speaker, we've been passing the bills, motions, in terms of revenue collection and revenue budgeting. Mr. Speaker, it is until this House wakes up and we look at how the money we have allocated to this that can be able to be told that you've delivered, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of pending bills, we have talked about it. And we talked about the members, people who have been paid genuinely. It is this House, and among the leader of majority is here this evening, that we follow up in those accounting officers of the relevant state departments for the payment of the genuine pending bills. And I want to be happy with my president that there is a recommendation that the pending bills should be paid on time. But very important, it is about just that pending bill. We must look at it, that is coming out from our audit report, from the auditor's report, that most of the members who have been paid for pending bills are not genuine, Mr. Speaker. And these are things we need to look at. We have the powers as members of the public. Again, we make laws in this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we make the Procurement Act, regulations, and the relevant state departments, through the accounting officers, are not following this. Mr. Speaker, many of the times we found out that we have the capacity to summon, which we have summoned, most of the officers, even below, for them to speak on and for the accounting officers. Mr. Speaker, you find that most of, in the name of officers, in the name of accounting officers, not following some of the regulations and laws that we pass here. We will not even be doing anything better to the public, but they're punishing the public, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, other issues that have risen, Mr. Speaker, are issues of not following. And the officer that I have employed, we must come in law.
Yes, the Honorable Vice Chair, you have a minute to wind up.
So, Mr. Speaker, as I wind up, I have so much to say from my background. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for the minute. I just want to say that this House needs to pick up and ensure that the laws that we make in this Parliament are followed. Number two, through the Public Accounts Committee, that we ensure all the relevant government officers that do not abide with the law and are not making sure that all finances are spent prudently should not have sitting in this House, as I recommended, sitting in the House and also public offices. In the last one, Mr. Speaker, I thank the members who have contributed, and I thank the members of my Public Accounts Committee, through the Chair, Honorable Opio, and I call upon the members to support this report as it will ensure that the public's funds are spent prudently. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to reply.
Very well. The Honorable Jessica has done well. She has informed us about the role of the Public Accounts Committee, being a post-mortem committee, being a mortician. As my good professor, the great Gifu Muigai used to say, that the role is that of a mortician, of a pathologist. He will tell you what caused the death, but the report of the pathologist is to inform the living, so that the living can now avoid whatever caused the death of Honorable members, thank you for good reason. I will not put the question for that report. I will direct that the necessary steps in that regard will be undertaken when the matter will be set down on the order paper again. Thank you, members, for staying the course. Honorable members, and the time being 9:30 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Thursday, the 24th June 2021 at 2:30 p.m.